Hi everyone, welcome back. My name's Anna from Fabric Dreamer and this is the Fabric Dreamer Chats with Inspiring Women. Today we are going to be speaking to Nerida from Nerida Hansen Creative. She's the mastermind behind a fabric empire and I'm so excited to hear parts of her journey and just unpack what it means to build such a thing with so many creatives. Let's get Nerida on. Welcome, Nerida. Thank you so much for your time today, and I'm very excited to hear more about your creative journey.
Oh, it's so nice to meet you, Anna. It's lovely.
So I would just really love you to tell us about Nerida Hansen Creative and what it is, because I know there's a few different layers to it, and yeah, what you're offering at the moment.
So right now I'm sort of, I think I'm in a little bit of a stage of, I'm evolving again because COVID, being in the fabric industry during COVID was just, it was extraordinary and it's left me really exhausted. My brand grew 300%. Thanks to our sort of sewers and our following, who helped us along. I really sort of expanded just from what started as representing fabric designers to building fabric brand, building sewing patterns, and really went, by the time I got to the end of last year, I sort of thought, oh yeah, we're on track, but this has actually been worse. So I'm in a bit of a state of, I guess, renewal right now, which is really exciting because once you get that exhausted, you think, okay, what do I really want and what am I really passionate about? So of course we're continuing fabrics because that's, really my passion. And we're starting actually just from this week, we've been very bare on stock in the last sort of 6 months, but we're starting to really start seeing some fantastic new fabrics come through and lots of new projects. So it's really good, but it's all stuff that I'm really, really passionate about. So I'm not pleasing the market anymore. I just know that people love what I do and I'm sort of trying to be more true to myself. So we're seeing a lot of fabrics, but at the same time, we've got an exciting new sewing pattern journey that we started. And of course, there's my design app as well, which has just sort of come into its own in the last couple of weeks with a new platform. So that's really, really exciting. So, but still, it's about fabrics, it's about sewing patterns, but what we're doing in that space and the messaging and what we're trying to achieve is quite different, I think, from before.
Yeah, amazing. So you're very textile focused. There, you do work with, you collaborate with a lot of artists, which is so awesome. How does that process of do artists apply to work with you? Do you seek them out? How does that relationship work when you're finding
It's
an artist?
definitely both. Definitely both. I do get emails pretty much every day. I would say at least one or two every day of artists that want to work with me in the fabrics. But I think some of the relationships that I've got with artists now are very long standing. Like I've represented them with other companies, licensing their designs elsewhere. And sometimes I just see an artist I love, and there's artists out there that I just stalk them and I say, hey, I would love to see your work on our fabrics. And so it happens in all sorts of different ways, both directions, I would say. Yeah. And, some of them are textile designers and they know how to bring their art to textiles in the format that we need it to print, but some of them aren't. Some of them are just artists that I just adore, and I help that process by, getting their artwork, their original artwork, and transforming it into a textile design. We do
Yeah, I
that.
wanted to know more about that because there is
Yeah,
sort of there's graphic designers, textile designers, then just artists, and it's
yeah,
sort of like how do
yeah,
you make a repeat pattern
yeah,
ready for sewing into a garment? And
yeah. Look, it's an incredible process actually, and I'm just so lucky to have incredibly talented artists that I work with. People like Miss Moresby, Victoria from the Scenic Route, Ella McKenna. Oh look, there's loads of them. I could keep going, but this talent that we work with, they're not only painters, they're actually really good digital artists as well. So it's very technical putting your art into repeat, but they do that, and they present to me concepts and new pieces of art that are put into repeat already. set up for textile printing. But you know, like Sarah Rowe, or okay, Miss Moresby, she would, you know, I've seen a few prints that I love, and I just think, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. And you know, a few days later, she's got it all digitized for me, ready to go. So they're all at different levels. Some of the artists I work with aren't graphic designers in that sense, so they don't know how to do that, but that's when we make sort of the process happen for them.
So you've got that ability to convert everything into...
Yeah, so I work with a small team of look, I used to have them in-house, but I work with a small team of freelancers, some of those ex-staff of mine too. And so I've always got someone who suits the type of work that we're trying to achieve. So, you know, I've got a really fantastic group of people around me who are always willing to, you know, do a day's work and create something beautiful with us. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm a textile lover myself, and my little brain's always going, oh my gosh, I can see that on it, but you know, that design has to be on a silk twill, or that one has to be on a cotton foil, whatever.
Yeah.
How does your brain work with design and fabric, and how do you decide what fabrics you want to use? And the other thing I want to add in there is, has there been some really standout fabrics turned into a garment that you just adore? Like any key standout moments in your career?
Well, to answer the first part of the question, over COVID, I haven't had as much influence over the fabric-based cloths that we use because it's been very hard. Of course, we haven't been able to travel. I did have a really beautiful source of organic and non-organic and organic satines and voiles, cotton linen, you know, your standard mid-weight cloth as well. So, and tencel linen's been my recent favourite as well. So when it comes to a design, you know, well, I guess you don't know, you develop a sense of that is going to work on tencel linen, but we're not going to put it on midweight because it's too flat, like the weave is too flat. We need something more textured. Or that's a really bright graphic print. It's going to work beautifully on a flat weave like a midweight cotton, but whilst it will be really good on linen too, the market for that print's not going to be as high on that substrate. So you sort of know too, we know our customers really well, and we know what they want to make. So we know that those customers, you know, would love this fabrication. And so you really do get to know, and I can order them on the right fabric without even testing. You know, I'll always get sample swatches, but I know exactly what it is. I'm not going to waste a sample because I know which substrate it works best on, and also which customers would love those prints and what they want to do with it. So that's another thing. I'm really, really excited about the next phase of this business because I'm actually working from the other way. So I'm going to start with the fabric itself and then working our way around. And we're doing lots of exciting new types of printing and hand printing and stuff like this. So that's a really exciting thing. And for me too, having dabbled in the quilting market, I did distribute, or have had my brand distributed in the US for a couple of years prior to COVID in quilting market. I know that that's not my thing. That's not my forte. So now that I'm really driven toward the fashion market, I'm really starting to explore new fashion textiles and, you know, a lot more feminine textiles as well, not just your standard sort of crafting or sort of stock standard cotton. So some really beautiful dress fabrics. So that's really exciting because I mean, you know, for a few years there, you just have to make money and you just have to build your brand. So you can't get too picky. Now I'm like, you know, it's all about, you know, the planet, the environment, the people who are sewing, and as in sewing the seeds of the cotton as well as the sewing of the machine. But, you know, it's about, there's a lot more to my business now than there was a few years ago. And now that sort of that world's starting to open up again, I'm starting to develop some new opportunities in that space. But I think for me, to answer the second question, there's just so much joy in seeing the output of what people can make and sew. There's lots of small brands out there that use my fabric to, you know, to make their own brand successful. And that always brings me a lot of joy, that we can work from the artist through to the manufacturer, through to, you know, us here sort of picking and packing the fabric and to the small maker, who then goes to finders keepers markets or something like that, and actually makes a nice profit for themselves on selling that product. So it's just such a beautiful, continuous and very joyful.
So exciting to see that.
Output.
Like, it's such a journey that it's like such an artistic journey, and
it is.
Cool.
And I just love that our customers want to be part of that rather than sort of just a mass manufactured fabric market. They want to be part of that connection to the artist in the first place. And also to me as an individual, I guess as the entrepreneur behind it, it's like, you know, I am just a mum who's just turned 50, who has her struggles and just loves being creative and has built a network of really creative people around her. So it's just a really nice continuum. But I think some of the joy that I get too is from our VIP Facebook page. So we have 4,000 VIPs that makes. Now I try and look every day, but sometimes I may not get in there for 3 or 4 days, and it just is astonishing to see what people are making. And I have to say, my favourites are the wedding dresses and the dresses that people create to wear to weddings, which are absolutely out of the box because they're not bought off the shelf, and that it could be a fabric. Like recently, I'm sorry I can't remember her name, but she used one of our really strong red and pink graphic prints from Jennifer Baron, a French artist who I love and adore. Normally you would see on you know, lots of very bright frocks and kids' clothes and stuff like that, and she put some red tulle over it for the skirt, and it was just stunning. And
wow,
you know, a real statement piece. And I just love the creativity, and we of course encourage people to hack our sewing patterns as well, because sewing patterns can give you a good base for creating something of your own, and I do encourage that. I love seeing how people change up and what they do to make that base pattern something really, really special. So I think to me, and you know, sometimes it brings me to tears. I'm just like, oh my God, that's just so fantastic. Yeah. So
this is why I think us creatives sort of, I don't know if you feel this or have felt this, I'm sure at some point, but you feel like what you do is not very important, maybe in the scheme of the whole world, and you know, but I think this sort of level of joy that we get from these moments, I think it does transform people's lives. And like even I would say that my mum's generation, like, were real sewers. Like she
absolutely,
and then my generation, we might have learned, if our mum was crafty, we would learn. But then we're all going to be relearning. Like there's a new generation that
absolutely. Oh, and it's such an exciting time because sewing is becoming so incredibly important on so many different levels. Like, and that's what I'm really going to be focusing on in the next year, is supporting community sewing programs. For example, is a project that I'm working on for early new year. It's can not only help us create microeconomies, which I think is so important. It's about connection, and you know, I know that there's sewing groups out there that people come to just for that connection, that sense of kinship, and it's also the creativity that it bears. You know, it brings people together, and just gives people that sense of, you know, achievement and accomplishment too, to go out and wear something that they've sewn. And you know, so sewing is going to be a major force. And also I think for the planet too, we have to stop buying fast fashion. We can't stop it altogether. We must reduce our individually, independently. Right now we have to reduce our reliance on cheap and fast fashion, because you know, look, I could talk for hours about why.
No, it's such a good point. And I really want to hear about, because I think there's such a misunderstanding, and it depends on the audience, but people look at it, oh, that's similar to whatever, and it's like a third of the price, and that's the mindset going into fast fashion. Like, how do we educate? Like, I'd love to hear what goes into, and I know there's a lot of process and a lot of cost, what goes into making beautiful fabric, making sure the artist is paid, the manufacturer is paid, you are paid, and how can we sort of educate mainstream on the value of cloth and design?
It's a really good idea, and I couldn't possibly answer it in a few minutes. But firstly, just I mean, as I said, in COVID, it's been really hard for me to source the base cloth and the cotton that I want to and the fabrics that I want to. But I just have a flat rule that every designer that contributes a pattern gets 10% of the sales, the gross sales. Now, you might look at a piece of fabric and say, oh, $30, Nerida makes $27 after the artist. I do not. There's, the cost of the raw goods, there's a cost of printing, the import fees and the GST on imports, and there's so many costs. So, but the artist gets 10% of the gross margin. Now, I have had other business managers in my business and say that's too much. Most companies pay 6-7% or less, if depending on volume. And I started with 10% because I could never, and especially through COVID, I can't get enough fabric to support that artist on a small percentage. So I try to give them more. And as our business grows over the next 12 months, because we've got some very, very exciting announcements soon about the US market, they will get paid really well because it's the design. And this is why I implore fashion companies to license or buy designs from independent designers, because it makes your brand, it elevates your brand, and there's so many different artists of so many different hand styles that whether you're a boho or whether you're a sort of modern or graphic fashion label, you can get amazing designs and support the artist community. So, that's the way that I go about, making sure that the artist gets rewarded. But as far as the cloth and the sustainability of the cloth, look, sustainability is so much more than just buying GOTS certified cotton. And in fact, your factory that you think is GOTS certified is probably not, because those certificates are thrown around like there's no tomorrow. They could have got it 2 years ago. They could be getting it from another factory to just give to you. So GOTS certification isn't always, whilst it's the best certification to make sure that you're buying purely organic fabrics, you may not be getting a factory that's honest about that certification. So that's just one of a million things. The other important thing is it's not just about I think people underestimate the power of organic as well. It's not just about our soil, it's about the people growing the cotton. So a new program that I'm working with in India, and again, I have to have 2 hours to talk about this, but we're working on some regenerative, I'm hitching onto a program that is about regenerative soil and farming practices. And it's about someone like myself dealing directly with the Indigenous farmers from that village, and mostly women as well. So I'll actually be investing in 75 acres of my own land, that I license from female farmers in India, and growing the cotton with them. And now it's purely organic. And one of the things behind organic fabrics too is that it's not just the soil that pesticides destroy and therefore have, incredibly ravaging effects on our planet. The clothing industry is the second biggest carbon emitter, and greenhouse gas emitter on the planet. It's absolutely destructive and it's terrible. So if we eliminate pesticides, we're obviously going to improve soil quality and the amount of oxygen that we can start bringing into the atmosphere. But it's about the human toll of pesticides. So the disablement is just heartbreaking. So when people actually could understand more about the human toll of that pesticides has on Indigenous farming practices all over the world, that's a big story that needs to be told. And therefore, then there's the other thing about, like me investing in or licensing the land from Indigenous farmers means that it's just me and them, and plus Radis, the organisation that I'm working for, who are helping these farmers connect with people like me. There's no margins from big corporations. So I'm going to be paying a lot less for my cotton than I am now, like a lot less. But the farmer's going to be getting 3 times the royalties from their cotton, because there's no big middle, and I say middlemen because it mostly is, there's no big middlemen involved, and there's no big corporations. There's just us and them. So it's a really harmonious relationship. And then Radis also really focused on removing and eliminating pesticides, both from the human toll and then also from the soil and the quality of the soil and what we can grow, and making sure that those farms are yielding food in between the cotton crops as well. So there's a lot we can do, but there's just so much education. But you know what, and for me in the next 12 months, it's not about just telling people this stuff. I'll actually be documenting my journey so people can actually just see and look and follow on or make their own decisions. So I'm really excited about this program because it's really hard to educate people.
It is, because that, like, everything, like, modern society, social media, you know, we've gotten ourselves into this consumeristic mindset.
Yes,
but we're wanting to improve everything at the same
Yeah.
time that we're detoxing from that mindset, and it's just it's such a tough thing because
I'm a culprit too. I'm a culprit. I don't buy fully organic. I don't buy, I am a convenience consumer right now myself. I'm less and less as I go. I'm trying to learn as much as I can about how I manage my lifestyle to be, improving the way I spend. But we've all got a very long journey, but it's really exciting though. And I think companies like Radis are just helping. They've really recognized how important it is for us to help sort of the path, for them to be that connector between myself and the farmers is so important, because it gives me an opportunity that I wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah.
And then I was just looking for the book, Sundressed by Lucienne. I've got it here somewhere. Beautiful author of a new book about sustainable fashion, and I'll actually send you a link to it. It's a beautiful, very recently published book about the impact that fashion is having on our planet and what we need to do and the decisions that we need to make. So that's I'm looking at Luciana as someone to sort of help guide me in that direction as well.
And I think the important thing is, how do we do that whilst keeping the joy alive around, because I think this could be a generalization, but I think back when sustainability was first sort of becoming a conversation, it's sort of like we all had to go back and wear pale grey or white cheesecloth. Because we want art. We want to wear art.
That's right.
How can we do that?
Fortunately, Ecotex inks are very earth friendly, and most of the modern digital printers are using Ecotex inks. The other thing about a lot of modern digital printers is that, as enormous as they are, they're fully recyclable themselves. So the plastics in that some of the big printing companies are making these machines out of, you can actually go and fully recycle every single piece of that machine. So that's an exciting journey, because we don't have to give up our beautiful prints. And the other thing that I'm working on very soon is block printing. So employing artisans to actually physically print our designs. And that's a really exciting journey for me as well, because and I mean, again, block printing has its issues too, because it uses a lot of the dyeing of natural, even though it's natural dyeing, using vegetable dyes and things like that, and the inks and the washing that's required is using up copious amounts of water. But there are communities and organisations in India who are actually using profits from their companies to build water, sort of regenerating water and building infrastructure around those villages that are affected, because that's another, every piece of fabric has a destructive story.
Absolutely.
So it's about how we manage that.
I'm reading a book at the moment called The Fabric of Civilization, and it is something like How Fabric Civilized the World, something like that. Fascinating read, because it's even cotton itself, we associate that with natural, but ancient cotton was, the actual cotton ball was too small, so they've genetically modified everything all those years ago to make it work for us, to make sure the filaments are longer and everything like that.
And then, of course, once the pests got into it, they produced the pesticides, and it all was a snowball effect. Fortunately, there's a lot we can do, and we can enjoy beautiful, colourful fashion. We absolutely can. And but I think also the mindset of reduce, reuse, recycle needs to be put back in. Like, it's not enough for a big retailer to have a recycling clothing tub or unit in the store. That is not saving the planet. That's sort of like
whacking an idea on, isn't it?
We've got to reduce first. It's about reducing. Then we have to recycle. And so then we have to reuse, and that's about, op shopping, mending, retailoring, doing all those sorts of fun things, which is another, area of mine that I just adore. Some of the people that I've seen in the market who have Instagram accounts totally dedicated to mending and just redesigning garments. So it's about reducing it first and foremost, reducing the amount of fabrics that we use, reducing the cellulose fabrics, reducing, all of the different ways that we, contribute to that destruction of our environment. Then it's reusing, and then it's recycling. But the recycling is not even managing the proper end of life. Anyway, this is a whole nother conversation.
No, that's good. That's right. We've got 10 minutes left. I'm going to change pace here a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about licensing, what that looks like. I'd love to hear about your May Gibbs collaboration, what that meant for your career as such a nostalgic, beautiful idea. How did that come about, and what does licensing look like for people that maybe not very familiar with it?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I didn't know a lot about licensing myself, but I was thrown into a job as in between my fashion labels and stuff. I was thrown into a job as a bedding buyer for Target, and it was a junior bedding buyer. So I'd never been a buyer before, and I was thrown into this job, and I used to work with Disney and Warner Brothers and those big companies, that real, it's very polarizing, that kind of licensing, because they're really ugly characters and it's all commercialized. But I used to love working with Disney. The team there was fantastic. It was exciting, and it was the best selling product in my line at the time, because I didn't really have any sort of artistic license in my role then. So I learned about licensing through that role. And then when I left my position at Target, I immediately became a licensing manager for independent artists. So what it means is basically that any company can pay a fee or a royalty to borrow your work or your brand for a certain period of time under, certain conditions, and that it really can grow and help grow, the appeal to brands that wouldn't otherwise have that design capacity in-house. So it's a fantastic model, and it's one that, when I first went to Certex in America, you see all the companies, every company just about will license from designers, where in Australia we haven't done that much. You'd all know the licensing now in the forms of these collabs that everyone's doing. So one company is paying another company who's better at design than them to offer the designs, and in exchange they give them a royalty of the sales. That's basically licensing. So the collab, it can be for a flat fee, it can be pro bono if you're doing it for a charity organization or a brand. It can be a percentage of sales. So there's lots of different ways that you can license your work, but it's a fantastic way to just work together with multiple brands, and I love that space. Whilst we sell in the textiles industry too, we sell a lot of designs in the big shows like Premier Vision Paris, where all the fashion labels go to purchase designs. They just buy, so they pay $1,000 for a print or whatever the amount may be. But more and more companies are licensing because they're understanding that they can leverage off other people's artistic success. That's basically, what we're doing. And that's what I've done. I've leveraged my brand off the artistic license of other designers, and, we enjoy that synergy together. So licensing is a really great model. And when May Gibbs first approached me, it was out of the blue. I was just sitting in my office and I got a call, and I was just like, it was the organization that runs the brand, and they said, would you consider designing and printing some May Gibbs fabric? And I'm like, what? Of course I would. What are you talking about? And at the time, Spotlight hadn't taken it on. They were sort of, we'll have one or two, we might do one or two prints, but they kind of I think their buyers sort of were looking back towards what they'd done in the past, and it was probably 15 years ago when it wasn't popular and it wasn't as nostalgic, but it was really having, recurrence. And one of my friends is actually the owner of Kip & Co, and they'd done a really beautiful collab, or it was on the way, this gorgeous collab with May Gibbs. And so I'd seen sort of that in the process and thought, oh, wow, it's just so beautiful and nostalgic. So like the girls from Kip & Co are always, they're really good at being first to the mark on doing, something that people are going to want to love later. But anyway, when I got the call, I was just so delighted to have that opportunity. And I worked first with Ellie Whitaker and then in-house to develop some May Gibbs prints. And I think one of the things that I did that was a little bit different from other brands in the past is that we actually redrew a lot of May's work, because it was old GIFs and old JPEGs that were really blurry and fuzzy, and a lot of the coloring was really saturated, and we sort of I spent thousands and thousands of dollars on reworking. So we had the license to rework the art, and we would redraw the lines and clear up and clean up, and then we could vectorize them all as well, which meant we could actually have free reign over what we did on the computer with it. And I would just put in new palettes and new colors into it, and it was such a joy, like such an incredible joy to bring all that to life. I mean, with licensing, you've always got a style guide that you need to very carefully adhere to, but they really loved the response from the May Gibbs Foundation was fantastic, and they loved it, and we brought it to market, and boom, oh my gosh, my business just went crazy. That was definitely part of that initial huge boom for my business, and we just couldn't get enough in stock. It would sell out immediately. So it was a fantastic journey, and fortunately, even though Spotlight have the license for the fabrics now, I'm still the creative director of May Gibbs. So all of that work that you see in Big W or Spotlight, a lot of that, so I actually produce the style guides for the brand.
That's so cool to know. That's really good to know. Talking to you, I've realised just how much of a fabric geek I am, and how I don't really unleash this very often. But I think we need to do a part 2, because I want to hear about all of your future projects coming up. But thank you. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. So welcome.
And I look forward to seeing what's in the pipeline.
Yeah, me too.
See ya.